My name was dragged through the mud at my father's funeral. While I stood holding a trembling eulogy in one hand, the other trembled with a letter from our family lawyer. "You've been removed from the will," he whispered, eyes full of pity. "There's proof you falsified documents and manipulated your father in his final days." I blinked in disbelief. Behind me, my sister Camille wept so believably, even I almost believed her. "I wanted to forgive her," she told the press, but she broke our father's trust. I was branded greedy, a fraud. Friends vanished. Family turned their backs. I was exiled from my own legacy. I screamed my innocence into empty rooms while she moved into the estate with crocodile tears and a rehearsed smile. Everyone believed. Her. They saw her grief. No one saw her lie. And by the time I pieced it all together, it was too late. She had forged my signature on estate transfer documents, sent anonymous emails hinting at financial misconduct under my name. She knew the system. She knew how to bend it. And worst of all, she knew how to break me while pretending to mourn beside me. I remembered how, 2 days before our father died, she insisted I leave the hospital to rest. "You're exhausted," she said sweetly. "I'll stay with him tonight." That night, the will was amended, so they claimed. I wasn't there to witness a thing. She cried in interviews, accepted sympathy like a saint, and handed my life to the media as if I were a monster. I lost not just the inheritance, but my identity, my name. And when I confronted her, she only smirked and said, "You always had the brains, sis." I just knew how to play the game. And she was right. She played me perfectly. I tried to fight back, but the legal damage was surgical. No paper trail traced back to her. Every document she forged had just enough truth to make doubt plausible. Her betrayal wasn't an act of rage. It was strategy. Cold, clinical, and deliberate. I spiraled. I couldn't find work. No one wanted to hire the woman who allegedly betrayed her own dying father. My savings dwindled. I moved into a cramped apartment far from the city. I lived in silence, haunted by whispers I couldn't silence. She wore designer gowns bought with money meant for both of us. She attended charity galas honoring our father's name, while I watched from a cracked laptop, wondering how she still looked me in the eye without shame. But the truth was, she didn't feel guilt. Not because she didn't understand what she did, but because she thought I'd never be strong enough to come back. I would have stayed broken, if not for that one night. I was walking home from a shift at a bookstore, my only steady job, when a car splashed through a puddle, soaking me head to toe. I stood there, rain mixing with tears, wondering if the universe had anything else left to take. I didn't see the step. I slipped, hit my head. Everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed again. The smell was different. The IV bag was newer. A nurse walked in. "Good morning," she chirped. "You took quite the fall last night, Miss Caldwell. It's March 3rd. Try not to scare us again." March 3rd? That couldn't be right. That was 2 months before our father died. Before the will. Before the smear campaign. I stared at the ceiling, pulse rising. Had I gone back? Was this a dream, or my second chance? The more I looked around, the more I knew it was real. My phone was exactly how it used to be. My calendar had all the reminders I remembered setting. Doctor's appointments, estate meetings, even Camille's fake birthday brunch. I sat in bed, trembling, not with fear, but with purpose. I had been gifted something rare. Foresight. I knew how this played out. And this time, I wouldn't be blindsided. I wouldn't play the trusting little sister. I wouldn't hand over documents just because she smiled and called me sis. No, I would let her make her move. But I would make mine first. Quietly. Precisely. And by the time she realized I wasn't the same woman she'd destroyed the First time, I'd be standing where she once stood, with the title, the power, and the truth on my side. The first thing I did was change all my digital passwords. Then I contacted an old friend of my father's, Mr. Alden, a quiet man with sharp instincts. I asked if we could meet discreetly. He agreed. Over coffee, I told him I suspected Camille might try to defraud the estate after our father's death. I didn't share details, just that I wanted help creating a legally sound, time-stamped record of my decisions and documents. He agreed, without asking questions. "You're not the first smart woman to be underestimated," he said. "Just make sure you're the last to underestimate yourself." Those words stuck. I left the cafe that day not with vengeance in my heart, but strategy. Camille had taught me something vital. Kindness without boundaries is currency to the cruel. So this time, I would be kind, with teeth, gentle, with documentation, quiet, with receipts. I played my role carefully. At family dinners, I smiled when she laughed. When she gossiped, I listened. I didn't correct her when she said things that weren't true. I simply noted them. I installed a private app that recorded audio during key meetings. I backed up every version of every document I signed, logging the time and location. I began writing a journal, updating it daily, not for therapy, but for record. Camille thought she was winding me into the same trap. She thought I was still that soft-hearted fool who believed family first meant sacrificing myself. I let her think that. Meanwhile, I began drafting my own pitch, a plan to launch a consulting firm with a focus on financial ethics. The same idea Camille had once mocked. "No one cares about ethics," she had laughed. But she was wrong, and soon, I'd prove it in the most poetic way. As the weeks passed, I grew closer to our father again. This time, I paid more attention to his words. I noticed the fatigue in his eyes, the way he worried about Camille's spending. "She doesn't think long-term," he confided, "but you always have." I recorded every conversation, with his consent. "Just for clarity," I said. He agreed, even joked about writing a memoir together. I encouraged him to update his estate plan, but this time, I made sure it went through my lawyer. Quietly. Legally. Camille remained none the wiser, too busy polishing her victim narrative. I didn't stop her. I let her write it, because stories only work when the ending favors the author. And I had already started editing the final chapters behind the curtain. The final confirmation came when I accidentally left a binder on the kitchen table. Inside was a fake draft of my version of the will, slightly altered from the one I had properly filed. It was bait, and Camille took it. I caught her taking photos of the document when she thought I was out. Later that night, I found her trying to log into our father's email account. She failed, of course, but that was all I needed. Proof that she was planning to move early. I updated Mr. Alden and filed a private alert with the estate board. Watch for altered documentation, especially if submitted under pressure. Then I waited, not with fear, but with certainty. Because this time I wasn't hoping to avoid betrayal. I was preparing to expose it. Camille moved exactly when I knew she would. Our father had been ill for a few weeks, and his strength was fading. While I stayed by his side, genuinely grieving the time we were losing, she focused on appearances, arranging interviews, ordering tailored mourning clothes, even drafting her own tribute for the press. "People will be watching," she said, as if death were a press event. Then one evening, I caught her slipping out of his room with a folder. "Just tax documents," she claimed. But I saw the nervous twitch in her smile. She was collecting signatures. Probably forged, maybe coerced. But it didn't matter. I already had our father's verified recordings. The alternate will stored securely through my lawyer. and a chain of custody that proved which documents were real and which were not. The first time, I didn't know the game. This time, I owned the board. Our father passed on a quiet Thursday morning. Camille staged her grief with flawless timing, posted a black and white photo, made a heartfelt speech, and positioned herself as the grieving golden daughter. I didn't contest it. I didn't even comment. I let her have her moment because I knew what was coming next. Days later, she submitted forged documents to the estate board, hoping to trigger the same legal change she had executed in the first timeline. But this time, the board flagged the inconsistencies. My lawyer, Mr. Alden, submitted the correct files within the hour, along with voice recordings of our father confirming his wishes, time-stamped and legally notarized. Camille's face when she received the inquiry notice from the board? Priceless. But I didn't smile. Not because I wasn't satisfied, but because this wasn't satisfaction. This was justice. She called me in a panic. They're saying the documents don't match. Did you do something? I kept my voice calm. I made sure Dad's real wishes were honored. Her tone sharpened. You always were a control freak. No, I said. I just stopped being your stepping stone. She screamed, something I didn't bother listening to, and hung up. The damage had been done. Her forged documents were invalidated, her credibility questioned, and the inheritance frozen, pending investigation. And while she scrambled, I remained quiet. I didn't need to make statements. I let the truth do the talking. And behind the scenes, I was already moving forward with Phase 2. The startup I had been quietly building would soon acquire a controlling interest in our family's investment firm, the very company Camille had hoped to inherit as her trophy. She took my name once. Now I'd take back the crown. I used the money from my reinstated trust to partner with a strategic investor, one who had been burned by Camille's careless spending during her brief stint as heir. He'd once refused to work with me, buying into her charm. Now he was all ears. You've grown, he said, reviewing my portfolio. I was wrong to bet on her. I nodded. She knew how to play the game. I knew how to build one. Within weeks, we executed a quiet buy-in. The press didn't notice at first. Camille certainly didn't. But when she showed up to a board meeting expecting to be named managing director, and saw my name already engraved on the new CEO plaque, she turned pale. What is this? She gasped. I smiled politely. Oh, Camille, you didn't think you'd be running this, did you? And with that, the power she stole was back in the hands it belonged to. The room fell quiet. The board didn't challenge me. They didn't question the shift. They had seen the documentation, the strategy, the vision. Camille had run on charm. I ran on results. And the numbers didn't lie. She stammered something about betrayal. You set me up, she cried. No, I corrected gently. You walked into the same trap you once set for me. You just didn't realize I learned from the first fall. She tried to protest, but no one backed her. Her influence had eroded quietly while she basked in stolen spotlight. Now, that spotlight turned cold. And for the first time, she saw what it felt like to be isolated. Not because someone framed her, but because someone finally outgrew her. I didn't need her apology. I just needed her to sit in the silence she once forced on me. After the board meeting, Camille tried to corner me in the hallway. You planned this, she spat, mascara smudged, voice trembling with rage. All of it. I met her eyes, calm and clear. You're right. I did plan. Just like you did. Only difference is I left a paper trail of integrity. You left a trail of fraud. Her lip quivered. This isn't over. I stepped closer, voice low. Oh, Camille, it's already over. You just didn't get the memo." She stormed off, heels echoing against the marble like a tantrum dressed in designer. But I didn't chase her. I walked back into the conference room, shook hands with my new board, and took my seat. Not just as CEO, but as a woman who had finally rewritten the story that was once stolen from her. And this time, I wasn't signing away my power. I was anchoring it with my name. I didn't fire Camille. That would have been too easy. I offered her a role, executive assistant to the CEO. She was stunned. "You expect me to work for you?" I smiled. "I expect you to finally understand what it means to earn your place." She accepted, out of pride, out of desperation, maybe both. The media spun the story beautifully. CEO offers second chance to sister who once betrayed her. But the truth wasn't generosity. It was clarity. Camille needed to learn what it felt like to be silenced, questioned, underestimated. I wasn't cruel. I didn't belittle her. I gave her tasks, deadlines, fair treatment, but I didn't make space for her games. And as the months passed, she faded, from threat to problem to background noise. Watching her click through calendars and organize files in the same office she once tried to erase me from, that was justice. Silent, inevitable, undeniable. With Camille beneath me in the structure she once tried to dominate, I turned my focus to building. I restructured the company's leadership program, prioritizing merit over legacy. I launched a mentorship initiative for young women navigating male-dominated industries. I called it Reclaim, a tribute to what I had done. Reclaimed my voice, my name, my future. The company grew in reputation and value. Clients who had once distanced themselves quietly returned. "You're not who we were told you were," one partner admitted. "You're better." I didn't gloat. I simply said, "Truth takes time, but it always arrives." My name was no longer synonymous with scandal. It was synonymous with strength. And that strength wasn't in revenge. It was in leadership, resilience, and the kind of power no one could fake. The kind that's earned. Camille remained distant, professional, subdued. The sparkle she once weaponized faded into something dull. One day, I found her staring at the Reclaim campaign poster in the lobby. "You named it after yourself," she murmured. "Not after myself," I replied. "After every woman who's had to rebuild from someone else's theft." She didn't respond. She didn't apologize, but I saw something shift in her expression. Not remorse, but recognition. She knew I'd won. Not just the company, but the narrative. She had tried to rewrite me out of the story. But I had taken the pen back and written an ending no one saw coming. And unlike her, I didn't have to lie to make it powerful. I just had to outlast the storm. And I had. Our mother reached out eventually. "You should forgive her," she urged. "Family is family." I looked at her, tired but firm. "Family doesn't frame each other for greed." She sighed. She was scared, jealous. She thought she'd be invisible next to you. I nodded slowly. She wasn't invisible. She was insecure. And she weaponized that against me. "So, what now?" Mom asked. I shrugged. "Now she works for me, and she sees what earned power looks like." My mother didn't know what to say. But I could tell. Even she saw it. Camille had tried to bury me with lies, and I had turned that dirt into foundation. I didn't forgive her because I had to. I forgave her because I had already moved beyond needing her apology. That's the thing about healing. It doesn't always require closure. Sometimes it just requires distance and a view from the top. I found the original forged documents one day, tucked in an unmarked folder Camille had hidden in a shared drive. I didn't confront her. I didn't bring them to the board. I simply sent them to my lawyer for safekeeping. Not as evidence to punish, but as a reminder. A reminder that people don't destroy you by accident. They destroy you when they think you'll never rise again. And I had risen. Far beyond her reach. Beyond the lies. Beyond the version of myself that thought keeping quiet was the noble thing to do. My silence used to be submission. Now, it was strength. I didn't have to scream to be heard. I didn't have to explain myself to be understood. I just had to keep building. And every brick I laid was made from the ashes of the person I used to be, before I stopped letting people like Camille define me. The Reclaim initiative grew faster than expected. Women from across the country applied for mentorships. Survivors of fraud, betrayal, and silencing wrote in with stories I recognized all too well. My sister used my trauma to gain sympathy, one woman wrote. Another said, my ex forged my name on financial documents and left me bankrupt. I read every word, handpicking the first group. These weren't victims, they were architects of their own recovery. We didn't teach them how to fight. We taught them how to win, quietly, permanently, strategically. Just like I had. Watching them reclaim their voices, their confidence, their power, it was the most healing experience of my life, because it proved I wasn't alone, and neither were they. Camille had tried to isolate me, but now I stood surrounded by a network of women who had all once been told they were too broken to rebuild. She was wrong. We rebuilt better. Camille rarely spoke during our meetings now. She took notes, passed coffee, nodded when told. But once, after a particularly moving Reclaim event, she stayed behind. You've changed, she said softly. I didn't reply. She stared at the floor. You really did it, didn't you? You got everything back. I tilted my head. No, I said. I got what was always mine, and then I built the rest from scratch. She blinked fast. I never thought you'd bounce back. You didn't think I was capable, I corrected, but I was. And I am. She looked up. I thought you'd destroy me. I smiled faintly. I don't need to destroy you, Camille. You're not that important to my story anymore. She flinched like I'd slapped her. But I didn't say it to hurt her. I said it to close the door, for me. Because healing isn't pretending the pain didn't happen. It's finally being free from needing a reaction. One afternoon, I visited my father's grave for the first time since everything settled. I brought white roses and a single folded letter. I sat by the headstone, brushing leaves away. She tried to erase me, I whispered. But I made sure your name, our name, was protected. I laid the letter down gently. It wasn't about the money anymore, or the company, or the legacy. It was about me finally becoming the woman he raised me to be, not the victim of someone else's ambition, but the product of my own resilience. I sat there a long time, not crying, not angry, just at peace. Because for the first time since he passed, I knew I'd honored him, not through revenge, but through rebirth. He never got to see this version of me. But I knew, somehow, he would have been proud, not just of what I rebuilt, but of how I rebuilt it. That night, I got home to find a letter on my desk. No name, no return address. Inside, a note. I see now. I hope that matters, even a little. I knew it was from Camille, but I didn't respond. Because the old me would have clung to that as an olive branch. The reborn me saw it for what it was. A flicker of self-awareness, not an invitation to reopen wounds. I folded the note, placed it in my drawer, and left it there. Closure didn't always need a response. Sometimes it just needed acknowledgement, and then distance. Camille could reflect all she wanted, but my life no longer circled her choices. I didn't need her approval, her regret, or her redemption. I had already written my ending, and it didn't include her holding the pen ever again. Months later, a journalist reached out to feature me in a special edition titled Women Who Reclaimed Everything. I hesitated at first. My story had been twisted once before, used against me. But then I remembered, that story wasn't written by me. This one would be. So I agreed, on one condition: no focus on Camille. No scandal headline, just the truth. They titled it, The CEO Who Let the Past Work for Her, Not Against Her. It went viral, not because I was loud, but because I was honest. I didn't paint myself as a warrior or a victim. I told the story of a woman who had been buried by her own bloodline and who chose to rise anyway, quietly, with purpose, and with proof. And that struck a nerve, because so many women have been written out of their own lives. All I did was hand them a pen. I was invited to speak on panels, attend international summits, mentor global leaders. But I kept my schedule tight. I didn't need attention. I needed alignment. If a stage didn't serve the women I fought for, I didn't take it. And that's what built my reputation. Not as the girl who was betrayed by her sister, but as the woman who outgrew betrayal entirely. People whispered in corporate circles, "She turned a scandal into a strategy." I didn't correct them, because I didn't turn anything. I uncovered. San Camille had given me the perfect storm. I just refused to drown. And when people asked, "Would you change anything if you could do it over?" I smiled and said, "No. Because if she hadn't tried to destroy me, I wouldn't have built this version of myself." And that truth, sharp and quiet, was better than any revenge. Camille still worked for me. She stayed out of sight mostly. No more passive-aggressive comments, no more fake smiles, just quiet, competent work. Once, during an off-site, she approached me. "You don't even hate me, do you?" she asked. I paused. I did. Once. But now? I shook my head. I don't feel anything. And that's scarier, isn't it? She nodded slowly. "You used to care so much." "I still care," I said. "Just not about your opinion of me." She left quietly after that. And I knew. We would never be friends again. But we would coexist. And for a woman who once tried to replace me, knowing she had to watch me thrive while staying silent was a sentence more honest than anything a court could deliver. I didn't need her pain. I just needed my peace. And I finally had it. Our annual Reclaim Summit was a turning point. 1,000 women in one room, all of them carrying stories like mine, some louder, some quieter, all of them powerful. I opened with one sentence. Someone once tried to write me out of my own life. The room froze. Then I smiled. So I rewrote it. The applause didn't roar. It built, steady, unbreakable, like the women who filled that space. That night, I walked among them not as a CEO, not as a survivor, but as one of them. Equal. Unashamed. Reclaimed. They didn't need to know every detail. They just needed to see it was possible. To fall. To lose. To be erased. And still find your name again. Not just on paper, but on purpose. That was the legacy I was building. One woman at a time. Later that evening, as I stood by the exit, one attendee hugged me and said, "You didn't just survive your sister. You outlived her narrative." I blinked, stunned by the clarity in those words. Outlived her narrative. That was it. Camille's version of the story had once defined me. Greedy, manipulative, undeserving. But I had buried that version with every truth I planted, every step I took forward, every day I chose to reclaim what she tried to destroy. And now I didn't live in her shadow. She lived in mine. Quietly, uncomfortably, permanently. Not because I forced her there, but because that's where she landed when she let envy speak louder than love. And I didn't need to push her further. She had already fallen. The day I walked past Camille's desk and didn't feel anything, not anger, not pity, not even satisfaction, I knew I was finally free. She looked up briefly, maybe waiting for some acknowledgement, some crack in my armor. But I gave her nothing. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. I had nothing left to give her. My life didn't orbit her decisions anymore, and she knew it. That realization in her eyes, that quiet devastation of no longer being the center of my gravity, that was the final undoing. I didn't slam a door. I didn't issue a final warning. I just kept walking. Because some endings don't need to be shouted. They just need to be lived. And mine was unfolding beautifully without her permission. I published a book the following year. Not a memoir, but a guide for women reclaiming power after betrayal. It didn't include Camille's name, not even a veiled reference. Because this story was never about her. It was about the woman I became despite her. The woman who once sat sobbing on a hospital floor, now stood on bestseller lists, and inside, boardrooms. Not because of vengeance, but because I finally realized the most dangerous thing I could ever do was heal in public. Not loudly, but visibly, proudly, without asking anyone to believe me, validate me, or save me. I save myself. And that's a story more women needed to hear. When awards came, recognitions, cover stories, honorary degrees, I accepted them. With grace. Not because I needed validation, but because I wanted young women watching to know. It's possible. To be written off, to be silenced, to be called a liar by your own family, and still rise, still lead, still write a new ending. I never stood on those stages to say, look what I did. I stood there to say, look what you can do too. And every time a young woman came up to me with trembling hands and said, I thought I was alone, I told her, you're not, and you never were. That, more than revenge, more than status, became the purpose I never knew I needed. Eventually, Camille submitted her resignation. No grand gesture, no goodbye speech, just an envelope on my desk with her badge inside. I opened it and found a note. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm starting over. The right way this time. I sat with it for a moment, then slipped it into the same drawer that held her first forged documents. They could sit together now. Who she was, and who she wanted to be. Whether she changed or not was no longer my concern. I didn't wish her harm. I just wished her distance. She had written her chapter in my story, but I had already turned the page. And this new chapter? She had no role in it. I celebrated 5 years as CEO with a quiet evening among close friends. No press, no speeches, just warmth. I looked around the room, the faces that stood by me, not when I was powerful, but when I was broken. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Stillness. True, grounded peace. No ghosts tapping at the windows, no old doubts clawing at the door, just the soft, unwavering truth that I had not only survived my sister's betrayal, I had transformed it into the foundation of everything I stood for now. She taught me who not to be. And for that, I would always be grateful. One final visit to my father's grave marked the end. I brought one rose, one page from my book, and a single sentence whispered into the wind. She tried to silence me. But you raised a woman who can never be erased. I stood there a while, not as a daughter seeking comfort, but as a legacy fulfilled. My father never got to read this version of my life, but I lived it in a way that honored the parts of him that believed in me. That's all I ever wanted, not to win over the world, just to walk through it fully as myself, unashamed and undeniable. And so, when people now ask, "How did you survive what she did to you?" I smile and say, I didn't survive her. I outgrew her. Because survival is about staying alive. But rebirth? Rebirth is about living bigger, louder, softer, wiser, on your terms. And mine no longer included shrinking, no longer included silence, no longer included her. My sister framed me to steal my inheritance. Reborn? I didn't just take back what was mine. I built something bigger. I returned not as her rival, not as her victim, but as the CEO she never expected to answer to. And when she looked at me across the office that final time, she didn't see the sister she once overpowered. She saw the woman she could never become.